They say blood is thicker than water, but in the industrial supply business, the only thing that matters is leverage. My brother stood on the break room floor, raising a plastic cup to toast his promotion to partner. Unaware I had already purchased the company's debt, he looked at me with that winning smile, thinking this was his coronation. He didn't realize I was standing there with the ink drying on the paperwork that would end his career. The fluorescent lights in the warehouse of Redwood and Rains Industrial Supply always hummed at a frequency that sat right behind my eyes. It was a low, electric drone that sounded like a headache waiting to happen. I stood by the loading dock doors, watching the rain hammer against the asphalt of the delivery yard. It was late October in Briar Glen, Pennsylvania, and the sky was the color of a bruised plum. My name is Madeline Collins. I am 33 years old, and for the last 7 years, I have been the person who makes sure the lights stay on, the inventory arrives, and the clients do not scream at the sales team. My official title is Senior Project Manager, but in practice, I am the janitor of other people's catastrophes. When a shipment of hydraulic valves goes missing in transit to Ohio, I am the one who tracks it down. When the payroll system glitches and the warehouse crew threatens to walk out, I am the one who cuts manual checks from the emergency ledger. I am good at it. I am praised for it, usually in hushed tones in the break room or in quick, desperate emails sent at midnight. Thank God for Madeline. They say, Madeline fixed it. But praise is not currency. You cannot spend it. And as I was about to learn, you certainly cannot build a future on it. The company quarter kickoff was mandatory. That was the only reason I was standing in the conference room on a Tuesday evening instead of being at home with my husband, Ethan. The room smelled of lukewarm pepperoni pizza and cheap cologne. Owen Rains, the founder of the company, stood at the front of the room. Owen was 62. A man who had built this business from a single truck and a garage full of gaskets. But lately, he looked tired. His skin was gray, hanging loose on his frame, and his eyes darted around the room like a trapped bird. Next to him stood my brother, Grant. Grant is 4 years older than me. He has the kind of face that makes people want to agree with him, square jaw, easy smile, eyes that crinkle at the corners in a way that suggests he is sharing a private joke with you. He had joined the company 2 years ago after failing to launch a tech startup in Austin and getting bored with a real estate gig in Philly. He was technically in business development, a title that meant he took clients to lunch and expensed high-end whiskey. I stood near the back, holding a paper cup of tepid soda, listening to Owen ramble about the quarterly targets. And now, Owen said, his voice trembling slightly, I have a special announcement. We are entering a new era at Redwood and Rains. We need fresh blood at the helm. Someone with vision. My stomach gave a small, involuntary lurch. I had just finished saving the chaotic rollout of the tri-state distribution project. I had saved the company $50,000 in logistics fees last month alone. I took a breath. Please join me, Owen said, gesturing to his right, in welcoming your new partner in the firm, Grant Collins. The room erupted in polite applause. My cup crumpled in my hand. The soda spilled over my thumb, sticky and warm. Grant stepped forward, beaming. He clapped Owen on the shoulder with a familiarity that made me blink. He looked out at the sea of faces, the warehouse guys in their grease-stained uniforms, the tired admin staff, and me. Thanks, Owen, Grant said. His voice was projected, smooth, practiced. It is a huge honor. I know we have had some rough patches lately, but that is over. We are going to modernize. We are going to lean into the future. He paused, and his eyes found me in the back of the room. He pointed a finger. A playful gun. And I know I can count on everyone to step up. Even my little sister back there, Madeline. You will finally have some real direction working under me. We are going to get you organized. Kiddo. Laughter. It rippled through the room. It was not malicious laughter from the staff, they were just reacting to the boss's joke, but it hit me like a physical blow. The humiliation was sudden and absolute. Working under him. Get you organized. I stood frozen. The sticky soda dried on my hand. I forced a smile because that is what women in my family do. We smile when we are embarrassed. We smile when we are angry. We smile until our jaws ache and our teeth grind down to dust. I did not storm out. I did not throw my drink. I waited until the applause died down, until the pizza boxes were opened, and the room dissolved into chatter. Then I walked out the side door, into the cool, damp hallway. Tessa Marlowe was waiting for me. Tessa was 50, the operations lead, and the only person in the building who knew where all the bodies were buried because she had helped dig half the graves. She was leaning against the wall, her arms crossed over her chest, looking at me with hard, dark eyes. "You okay?" she asked. "I am fine," I said. My voice sounded thin, like paper tearing. "He did not tell you," Tessa stated. It was not a question. "No. He has been in closed-door meetings with Owen and Callahan for 3 weeks," Tessa said, lowering her voice. Callahan Pike was the CFO, a man who wore suits that cost more than my car, and smiled with his mouth but never his eyes. I stared at her. Why Grant does not know the first thing about the financials. He thinks EBITDA is a Greek island. Tessa shrugged, looking down the hall to make sure we were alone. "Owen is scared. Madeline, I hear him on the phone. He talks about legacy. He talks about protection. Callahan has been whispering in his ear that he needs a successor who can sell the vision. Not just manage the inventory, and Grant is selling something." All right. I felt a cold flush of shame. Shame that I cared. Shame that I had spent 7 years working 60-hour weeks, missing anniversaries, taking calls at 3 a.m. when the server crashed, thinking it mattered, thinking that merit was a ladder I could climb if I just kept my head down and worked hard. "Grant is the partner," I whispered. Tessa reached out and squeezed my arm. Her grip was tight. "Watch your back, Maddie. This happened too fast. Owen does not give up equity. He hoards it. For him to make Grant a partner. Something is wrong." I went back to my desk to get my purse. I could hear Grant's laugh booming from the conference room. It sounded like a victory lap. The drive home was a blur of wet asphalt and red taillights. I pulled into the driveway of the small ranch house Ethan and I had bought 4 years ago. It was a modest place, needing a new roof and better insulation. But it was ours. I sat in the car for a long time, listening to the rain tap against the glass. I was angry. Yes, but mostly, I felt foolish. I had played by the rules. I had been the good employee, the good sister, the dependable one. And all it had gotten me was a public demotion disguised as a family triumph. I walked inside. Ethan was in the kitchen, grading papers. He was a high school counselor, a man with infinite patience and a heart that was too soft for this world. He looked up when I entered, taking in my wet hair, my pale face, the way I was holding myself like I was made of glass. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," I replied. I did not tell him then. I could not bring myself to say the words out loud yet. I just went to the bedroom, changed into sweatpants, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, working under him. The next morning, the office felt different. The air was thicker. People stopped talking when I walked into the break room. They looked at me with pity, which was worse than disdain. I went to my office, a small, windowless box near the server room, and closed the door. I turned on my computer and tried to focus on the backlog of shipping manifest reconciliations. At 10 o'clock, my phone rang. It was not the internal line. It was my direct external number. "This is Madeline." I said, "Madeline. It is Frank Ricci, from Northgate Freight." My posture straightened. Frank was one of our oldest vendors. He ran a fleet of trucks out of Ohio that handled our heavy machinery transport. He was a no-nonsense guy who sent Christmas cards with pictures of his golden retrievers. "Hi, Frank," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. "What can I do for you?" "Do we have a problem with the Cleveland shipment?" "No, the shipment is fine," Frank said. He sounded awkward, hesitant. "Look, I probably shouldn't be calling you. I should be calling accounts payable, but I have known you for 5 years, and you have always shot straight with me. What is it?" "Frank, I have 3 invoices past due. Madeline, 60 days out. That has never happened with you guys. You pay like clockwork. My stomach dropped. I did not handle the actual check cutting that was finance, but I managed the vendor relationships. If vendors weren't getting paid, the supply chain would freeze. Frank, I am so sorry. There must be a mix-up. I approved those invoices weeks ago. I know, Frank said. But here's the weird thing. I called down there yesterday, asked to speak to Callahan or one of his clerks. I got some guy I never heard of. He told me the payment was in process, but he asked if we could reroute the wire transfer. Reroute it. I asked. My hand tightened on the receiver. To where? To a new account. Frank said, he said you guys were switching banks. He wanted to send me a new routing number over email. I told him I don't change payment details without a signed letter on company letterhead. He got huffy and hung up. I felt a chill run down my spine. We were not switching banks. I had just seen the operating account binder on Tessa's desk yesterday. It was still Ironvale Commercial Bank, same as always. Who did you speak to? I asked. Didn't catch his name, Frank said. But Madeline. Seriously, I can't keep trucks on the road if I don't get paid. I am holding the next shipment until this clears. I will fix it. Frank, I promise. Give me 24 hours. I hung up. The silence in my office was heavy. I logged into the purchase order system. I had administrative access because I needed to track costs against project budgets. I pulled up the Northgate account. The invoices were there. They were marked pending approval. That was impossible. I had approved them myself. I remembered doing it. I clicked on the audit log for the latest invoice. Status approved by M. Collins. Date October 12th. Status reverted to pending by admin. Date October 14th. Status approved by M. Collins. Date October 20th. I stared at the screen. October 20th was a Sunday. I had been at a pumpkin patch with Ethan. I had not logged in all day. Someone had used my digital signature. It was a small thing, technologically speaking. My digital key was on the shared drive. Password protected. But the password was not exactly Fort Knox. It was meant for convenience, so I could sign off on rush orders when I was in the field. I scrolled back. I found another one. A purchase order for $5,000 of packaging materials from a vendor I did not recognize. Blue Harbor Components, approved by M. Collins. Date, October 22nd. I had never heard of Blue Harbor Components. I had certainly never ordered $5,000 of cardboard from them. I sat back in my chair, the blood draining from my face. This was not just a mistake. This was a pattern. Someone was ordering things in my name, and someone else was stalling payments to legitimate vendors. I printed the logs. I folded the pages and put them in my purse, underneath my wallet. I did not leave them on the desk. That weekend, we had to go to Larkhill. Larkhill was the town where Grant and I grew up, 40 minutes west of Briar Glen. It was smaller, sadder, a place where the steel mills had closed in the 90s and never really been replaced. My parents still lived in the same split-level house on Elm Street. Dinner was roast beef, overcooked, with gray beans and mashed potatoes that tasted like instant mix. My mother, Helen, sat at the head of the table. My father, Jim, ate in silence. His eyes focused on his plate. He had been a foreman at the mill before his back gave out, and he treated conversation like manual labor, something to be avoided if possible. But Mom was glowing. She looked at Grant like he was the second coming. I saw the announcement on Facebook, she said, beaming. Partner, oh, Grant, I always knew you would be the one to really make something of yourself. Grant swirled his wine glass. It was a cheap Merlot, but he held it like it was a rare vintage. It is a big responsibility. Ma, he said, affecting a tone of weary leadership. Owen needs someone who can see the big picture. The company has been stagnant. It needs energy, and Madeline's still working there. Mom said, turning to me, it must be so nice for you, Maddie, to have your big brother looking out for you. I cut a piece of beef. It was tough as leather. It is fine. Mom, just fine. Grant chuckled. Come on, Madeline. Do not be like that. I am going to make your life easier. You have been buried in the weeds for too long. You dwell on the details too much. You need to learn to be more flexible. Flexible. I repeated. Yeah, flexible. You get so hung up on process. Oh, we can't do that. The form isn't signed. Oh, the inventory doesn't match. Grant waved his hand dismissively. Business is about flow. Maddie, you have to let things flow. Is that what you call it? I asked. My voice was calm, but my heart was hammering. When invoices do not get paid, when vendors call me asking why we are rerouting wire transfers, the table went silent. Grant's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went flat. A flicker of something fear-anger passed through them. That is just finance stuff, he said smoothly. Growing pains. Callahan is updating the systems. Do not worry your pretty little head about it. Don't talk to your sister like that, Ethan said. It was the first time he had spoken in 20 minutes. His voice was low, warning. Grant laughed. Relax. Ethan, I am just saying. Madeline is great at the small stuff, but she gets stressed. I am here to take the load off. Mom nodded vigorously. Exactly. Grant is the leader. It is a gift. Madeline, you should be grateful he is willing to take charge. You know you have always been a little high-strung? High-strung. That was the family code for competent. That was the word they used when I organized my father's medical appointments because he refused to do it. When I balanced my mother's checkbook because she kept overdrawing it. When I got Grant out of trouble in college when he got caught with a trunk full of stolen road signs. I put my fork down. I am not high-strung. Mom, I am the one who does the work. Oh, stop it, Mom snapped. Do not be jealous. It is ugly. This is Grant's moment. Let him have it. I looked at my mother. I looked at Grant, who was smirking at his wine glass. I looked at my father, who was pretending he wasn't there. I realized then that no amount of truth would change the narrative at this table. In this house, Grant was the golden sun, and I was just the moon that reflected his light. If I tried to explain about the digital signatures or the rerouted payments, they would tell me I was being hysterical. They would tell me I was trying to ruin Grant's success. I took a sip of water. You are right. I said, Congratulations, Grant. The tension broke. Mom smiled. See? That is better. Family supports family. I excused myself to use the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the tub, breathing in the smell of potpourri and old towels. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an email. The sender was a random string of characters, user 8892_temp. The subject line was just, look closer. I opened it. You are being set up as the fall person. They are moving the toxic debt to operations. Check vendor 47-blue. They are not shipping product. Attached was a screenshot. It was blurry, taken with a phone camera of a computer screen. It showed a general ledger entry. Vendor Blue Harbor Components. Amount $42,000. Authorized M. Collins. Code Ops-XP-emergency. I stared at the screen. $42,000. I had never authorized that. An Ops-XP emergency was the code for immediate, no questions asked spending, usually reserved for disaster recovery. My hands were shaking. I wasn't just being overlooked anymore. I wasn't just the annoyance. I was the scapegoat. I deleted the email from my phone, but the image was burned into my brain. I flushed the toilet, washed my hands, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same as I always did, brown hair pulled back in a clip, sensible blouse, tired eyes, but something behind my eyes had hardened. I went back to the table. I ate my cake. I listened to Grant talk about the new Porsche he was thinking of leasing. On the drive home, Ethan drove. I stared out the window at the passing telephone poles. You were quiet tonight, Ethan said. After you came back from the bathroom, I got an email. I said, work sort of. I told him about the digital signatures. I told him about Frank from Northgate. I told him about the anonymous tip and the $42,000. Ethan listened without interrupting. He kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady on the wheel. When I finished, he didn't slam the dashboard. He didn't yell about suing them. He just asked, So what do you want? I looked at him. What do you mean, what is the end game here? Maddie, Ethan asked. Do you want to burn it down? Do you want to scream at them, or do you want to get out? I thought about it. I thought about the years I had poured into Redwood and Rains, the systems I built, the people I hired. The warehouse guys who trusted me. If I left, if I just quit, the company would collapse. Grant would drive it into a ditch within 6 months. The employees would lose their jobs. My parents would lose their retirement. Because I knew for a fact Dad had co-signed a loan for Grant years ago that was tied to the company's success, somehow a detail they tried to hide, but I had found in the mail. And if I stayed and did nothing, I would be the one in handcuffs when the auditors came. I don't want chaos, I said quietly. I don't want to just hurt them. That is useless. Then what I want respect, I said, and I want safety. I want to know that when I walk away, or when I stay, it is on my terms. I want to be the one holding the pen. Ethan nodded. Then don't fight him. Maddie, not yet. If you fight him now, he wins. He has the title, he has the parents, he has the CEO's ear, I know. So what do? I took a deep breath. The rain had stopped, and the clouds were breaking, revealing a sliver of cold moon. I do what I do best, I said. I managed the project. The next morning, I did not go to HR. I did not storm into Owen's office. I bought a physical notebook, a black composition book with a marble cover, the kind you buy for $1 at the drugstore. Cash, no receipt. I arrived at work an hour early. I sat at my desk and opened the notebook. Page 1, Timeline of Anomalies. I wrote down the date of the kickoff, the date of Frank's call, the dates of the mysterious logins. Then I logged into the system. I did not try to access the restricted financial drives. That would trigger an alert if IT was watching, and I had to assume they were. Instead, I went to the document retention server. I requested an archive of all authorization logs for the past 6 months. I flagged it as Process Improvement Audit, Internal Efficiency Review. It was boring. It was bureaucratic. It was exactly the kind of thing Madeline Collins would do to optimize a workflow. It was also the only way to prove I wasn't the one robbing the company blind. I watched the progress bar crawl across the screen. Downloading. Grant walked past my office door. He was wearing a new suit. He stopped, leaned in, and grinned. "Morning, partner," he said. Working hard or hardly working, I looked up. I did not smile, but I did not frown either. I gave him the look of a sister who knows exactly who he is, even if he doesn't know she knows. Just cleaning up the files. "Grant," I said. "Just getting organized, like you said." "Good girl," he said, and walked away, whistling. I looked back at the screen. The download finished. I saved it to an encrypted external drive, pulled the drive out, and put it in my pocket. Let him whistle. I had work to do. The email I drafted to Callahan Pike sat on my screen for 20 minutes before I hit send. I had read it 12 times, stripping away any adjective that sounded accusatory and smoothing over any phrase that hinted at suspicion. I framed it as a workflow efficiency audit, a boring, bureaucratic initiative designed to optimize our procurement cycles for the upcoming fiscal year. In the corporate world, if you want to hide a knife, you wrap it in a spreadsheet. I clicked send. The response was almost immediate. But it wasn't an email. It was Callahan standing in my doorway. Callahan Pike was 45, trimmed, tanned, and wore suits that had a subtle sheen to them, the kind that cost more than my mortgage payments. He leaned against the doorframe, holding a tablet loosely in one hand. "Madeline," he said. He had a way of saying my name that felt like he was tasting it to see if it was expired. "I just got your note. Process improvement." I turned my chair to face him. I kept my face open. "Helpful. We are bleeding time on vendor reconciliation." Callahan. "I want to tighten up the approval loops between operations and finance. If I can map the data flow, I can probably cut our processing time by 15%. Callahan smiled. It was a practiced expression, involving only the bottom half of his face. "I love the initiative," he said. "Really, it is great to see you engaging with the bigger picture, but right now, my team is underwater with the quarterly close. We are migrating some legacy databases. And I really don't want to add another layer of auditing on top of them while they are trying to keep the lights on. It is not an audit. I lied. It is just a review. I can do it myself. I just need read-only access to the vendor master file and the check register for the last 6 months. Callahan laughed. A dry, sharp sound. Security protocols. Maddie, you know how it is. We are tightening everything up for the insurers. Tell you what, give me a few weeks to get the migration settled, and then we will sit down and look at your efficiency ideas. I promise. He pushed off the doorframe, signaling the conversation was over. Don't work too hard, he added over his shoulder. You look tired. I waited until his footsteps faded down the hall before I let the mask drop. Give me a few weeks. In a few weeks, the evidence would be buried, or the money would be gone. I left my office and went down to the floor. The warehouse was my sanctuary. It smelled of diesel fumes, cardboard, and packing tape, the smell of commerce. Forklifts beeped in the distance. A rhythmic, industrial heartbeat. Tessa Marlowe was at the shipping desk, arguing with a driver about a bill of lading. She saw me and jerked her head toward the loading dock. We walked out into the cool air. The sky was overcast, a flat, oppressive gray. He shut you down. Didn't he? Tessa asked. She lit a cigarette, shielding the flame with a cupped hand. He put me on hold, I corrected. Cited database migration. Bull. Tessa exhaled a plume of smoke. The database is fine. I ran a query on it this morning. It is running the same version it has been for 3 years. I leaned against the concrete wall. What are you hearing? Tessa. Tessa looked around, checking the yard. The drivers were busy, but she lowered her voice anyway. Owen was down here yesterday, late, after the shift change. He was walking the floor with 2 guys I didn't know. Suits, not vendor suits, banker suits, bankers. Maybe, or equity guys. Owen was pointing out the new conveyor system. Talking about scalability, he used the phrase pivotal moment 3 times. My stomach tightened. A pivotal moment. That was code for a sale. If he sells, I said, Grant's partnership makes even less sense. Why bring Grant in if you are cashing out window dressing? Tessa said grimly. Grant has the last name. It makes the company look like it has a succession plan, which drives up the valuation. Buyers like stability. They like to see a family dynasty, even if it is hollow, but Grant doesn't know anything. I said, he doesn't have to. Tessa flicked ash onto the asphalt. He just has to look good in the brochure. I went back inside, my mind racing. If they were pumping the valuation for a sale, they would be cutting costs aggressively to make the EBITDA look better. But the ledger entry I had seen for Blue Harbor Components wasn't a cost cut. It was $42,000 of bloat. I went back to my desk and pulled up the vendor list again. I couldn't see the financials, but I could see the activity logs in the inventory system. I searched for Blue Harbor Components. The system returned a list of 47 orders in the last 3 months. All of them were for standard MRO supplies, hydraulic fluid, gaskets, industrial lubricant. I frowned. We used to buy hydraulic fluid from Miller Steel. We had a contract with them for 10 years. I pulled up the Miller Steel file. Status inactive. Reason vendor non-performance. My jaw clenched. Miller Steel had never missed a delivery in a decade. I called up the pricing history. Blue Harbor was charging us $120 a drum for fluid. Miller used to charge us $85. That wasn't cost-cutting. That was bleeding. Why would we fire a reliable, cheaper vendor for a new, expensive one? Unless the money wasn't really going to a vendor. I needed to know who Blue Harbor was. I Googled them. A generic website came up, full of stock photos of handshakes and shipping containers. No team page, no history, just a phone number and an address in Harbor Point, Delaware. I wrote the address down in my black composition book. 1200 Industrial Way, Suite 404. Then I heard a commotion in the hallway. I stood up and walked to the door. Grant was standing in the middle of the open plan office where the project coordinators worked. He was holding a file, his face flushed with the artificial high of authority. Sarah, my best coordinator, looked like she was about to cry. I don't understand. Sarah was saying, I am in the middle of the expansive logistics plan for the tri-state account. Madeline assigned me that project. Grant waved the file. Plans change. Sarah, agile methodology. We need you on the front desk. The receptionist is out on maternity leave starting Monday. And we need a friendly face greeting clients. Reception, Sarah's voice cracked. Grant, I have a degree in supply chain management, and you will use it to manage the supply of coffee and visitors. Grant said, chuckling at his own wit. Look, everyone pitches in. That is the culture now. Grant, I said, my voice cut through the room. Heads turned. Grant spun around, his smile tightening. Ah, Madeline, just making some resource adjustments. Sarah is a level 2 project lead. I said, walking toward him. You can't put her on reception. She is managing $300,000 of freight logistics. Grant sighed, a loud, theatrical exhale that suggested he was dealing with a petulant child. Madeline, can we not do this in front of the team? It is unprofessional. You are demoting my staff without consulting me. I said, keeping my voice steady. That is unprofessional. Grant stepped closer. He lowered his voice. But not enough. It was a stage whisper, meant to be heard. You are getting emotional. Madeline, the word hung in the air. Emotional. It was the ultimate weapon used against women in business. If you care, you are emotional. If you fight, you are hysterical. I am not emotional. I said coldly, I am operational. Sarah stays on logistics. We hire a temp for reception. That is how it works. Grant stepped into my personal space. He smelled of mints and insecurity. I am the partner. Madeline. I make the resource calls. You manage the projects I give you. Sarah moves to the front desk on Monday. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with Owen, but I wouldn't bother. He trusts my judgment. He turned his back on me and walked away. The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah looked down at her desk. I could see the defeat in her shoulders. I am sorry. Madeline, she whispered. I walked over to her. Do not move your things. I said softly. Do not pack a single box. I will fix this. But I couldn't fix it. Not that day. I went back to my office and closed the door. My hands were trembling. Not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like clarity. Grant wasn't just incompetent. He was dismantling the machinery of the company to feed his ego. He was breaking things just to prove he held the hammer. I needed a win. I needed a thread to pull. I looked at the address for Blue Harbor Components again. 1200 Industrial Way, Suite 404. Something about it nagged me. I opened my email. I went to the IT support ticket system. A few months ago, we had switched our IT administration from an internal hire to an outside contractor group called Apex Tech Solutions. Callahan had claimed it was for cybersecurity robustness. I found the introductory email from Apex Tech Solutions, Headquarters Harbor Point, Delaware. My heart skipped a beat. I scrolled down to the footer of the email. Address 1200 Industrial Way, Suite 404. I sat back. The air leaving my lungs. The company supplying our hydraulic fluid and the company managing our servers were in the same suite. They weren't just two different vendors. They were the same entity, or at least, they shared a mailbox. This meant the IT admin, the person with unrestricted access to our email servers, our financial logs, and my digital signature was working out of the same office as the fake vendor draining our accounts. It wasn't a breach. It was an installation. They had built a tunnel into the company from the inside. I needed confirmation. I couldn't trust anyone in the building. Tessa was loyal, but she didn't know the financial side. I needed someone who knew how the money used to work before Callahan and Grant took over. I needed Dale Vickers. Dale had been the procurement manager for 20 years. He had retired abruptly 6 months ago. The official story was that he wanted to spend more time with his grandkids in Florida, but I remembered the day he left. He hadn't looked like a man heading to the beach. He had looked like a man fleeing a crime scene. I called him. He didn't answer. I texted him. Dale, it is Madeline Collins. I know about Blue Harbor. I need to buy you coffee. He replied 3 minutes later. Meet me at the diner on Route 9. Not the one near the plant. The one by the highway. Come alone. The diner was a chrome and neon relic that smelled of burnt grease. Dale was sitting in a back booth, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. He looked 10 years older than the last time I had seen him. He didn't stand up when I arrived. He just gestured to the seat across from him. "You shouldn't be digging into this, Maddie," he said. He didn't say hello. I ordered a black coffee. "Dale, I found purchase orders with my signature on them. Things I didn't buy." Dale winced. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling slightly. "It started with me," he said quietly. "About 8 months ago, Callahan called me in, said we needed to diversify the supply chain, handed me a list of new vendors, Blue Harbor, Ironclad Logistics, a few others, and I told him the pricing was garbage. I told him the vetting wasn't done. He told me the board had already approved it. He put the papers in front of me and told me to sign off on the onboarding. Did you Dale looked out the window? He told me my pension was tied to the company's stock valuation. He said if we didn't show strategic growth through new partnerships, the valuation would tank and my retirement would be worth pennies. He threatened your pension." I said, "He implied it." Dale corrected. "Callahan never threatens directly. He just paints a picture of a very bleak future and hands you a pen. So you signed. I signed the onboarding docs. But then the invoices started coming in. For rush orders that never arrived. For consulting fees for logistics that never happened. I went to Owen. What did Owen say?" Dale let out a bitter laugh. Owen looked at the spreadsheets I showed him, and his eyes glazed over. "He doesn't understand the modern numbers. Maddie, he knows gaskets and gears. He doesn't understand shell companies and retainers." Callahan stood there and spun a web of jargon. Capital expenditure amortization. Deferred tax assets. He confused Owen until Owen felt stupid. And when Owen feels stupid, he gets angry. He told me to stop bothering the finance team and do my job. "So you quit." "I ran," Dale said. "I saw the writing on the wall. They are hollowing it out. Maddie, they are stripping the copper out of the walls while painting the front door gold." "Who is they?" I asked. "Is it just Callahan?" Dale shook his head. "Callahan is the mechanic, but he is working for someone, or with someone, and your brother." He looked at me with pity. "Grant is the distraction." Dale said, "He is the clown they sent into the ring to keep everyone looking at the center, while they pick the pockets in the stands." I drove back to the office with a cold resolve settling in my chest. Dale was right. Grant was a puppet, but puppets can still do damage if they flail around enough. I went straight to Owen's office. I didn't make an appointment. Owen was sitting behind his massive oak desk, staring at a framed photo of himself and my father from 30 years ago. He looked up when I entered, startled. "Madeline," he said, "I was just—" "Owen, we need to talk." I said. I sat down. I kept my voice low, gentle. I didn't want to trigger his defensiveness. Though I knew it was likely inevitable, I am worried about the vendor list. "Owen, I am seeing invoices for Blue Harbor components that don't match our inventory, and we are paying 50% above market rate." Owen sighed, rubbing his temples. "Madeline, please, Callahan explained this. We are paying a premium for guaranteed availability. The supply chain is volatile. We fired Miller Steel." "Owen, Miller never missed a delivery. Miller was old school," Owen said, reciting lines that sounded rehearsed. "We need agile partners." I leaned forward. "Owen, the IT company we hired has the same address as the vendor selling us the overpriced fluid." Owen blinked. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw the old Owen the sharp, suspicious businessman who counted every bolt. But then the fog returned. Coincidences happen in industrial parks. "Madeline, you are looking for shadows. I am looking out for the company." I said, "Grant is reassigning key staff to reception. He is alienating the warehouse team." "Owen, this isn't leadership. It is chaos." Owen's face hardened. He sat up straighter. "Grant is learning." He snapped. "He is stepping up. You know, Madeline, you could learn a thing or two from him about loyalty." "Loyalty," I repeated. "Yes, loyalty. Grant doesn't question every decision I make. Grant supports the vision. He understands that family stands together. You are always picking at the seams, always looking for the flaw, because I want the garment to hold together, I said, my voice rising. That is enough, Owen said. He pointed a finger at me. Grant is the partner. You will respect that. If you can't work with him, maybe you aren't the right fit for the future we are building. The threat hung there. He was choosing the fantasy over the reality. He was choosing the son who flattered him over the daughter who saved him. I stood up. I understand. Owen, I walked out. I felt hollowed out. When I got back to my desk, there was a large manila envelope sitting on my keyboard. It was from HR. I opened it. It was a new employment agreement, retention bonus and confidentiality addendum. I scanned the legalese. It offered me a bonus of $25,000, immediate payout. But the strings attached were made of steel wire. Clause 4, employee agrees to a strict non-disparagement policy regarding the company, its officers, and its partners. Clause 7, employee waives the right to any whistleblower protections regarding internal financial disclosures. Clause 9, employee agrees that all internal data, including logs and communications, are the sole property of the company and cannot be retained or duplicated. It was a muzzle, a $25,000 muzzle. If I signed this, I couldn't report them. I couldn't sue them, and I effectively admitted that I had no right to the evidence I had already collected. Callahan walked by. He didn't stop, but he slowed down just enough to make eye contact. He raised his eyebrows. A silent question. Do you want the money, or do you want the war? I put the contract in my drawer. I didn't sign it. I worked the rest of the afternoon in silence. I focused on the mundane tasks, keeping my head down. At 5 o'clock, I tried to log into the dashboard that tracked the real-time cash flow from the bank feed. It was a tool I used daily to time vendor payments. Access denied. I frowned and tried again. User M. Collins does not have permission to view this resource. I tried the inventory value report. Access denied. I tried the vendor master file. Access denied. My heart hammered against my ribs. They were locking me out. They knew I hadn't signed the contract. And they were blinding me. I looked at the IT support icon in the corner of my screen. Apex Tech Solutions. The enemy was watching my keystrokes. They probably knew I had visited the Blue Harbor website. They certainly knew I had tried to access the logs. I sat there for a moment, panic fluttering in my chest. If I couldn't see the data, I couldn't prove the fraud. If I couldn't prove the fraud, they would frame me, fire me, and ruin me. I took a deep breath. I forced my hands to stop shaking. I thought about what Ethan had asked me. What is the endgame? I looked around my office. The computer was compromised. The network was hostile. The leadership was complicit. But Redwood and Rains wasn't just data. It was a physical place. It was trucks moving on highways. It was pallets of steel sitting on concrete. It was inventory that had to physically arrive or not arrive. If I couldn't see the books, I would look at the reality. Paper trails can be forged. Digital logs can be altered. But you cannot fake a 40-foot shipping container. Either it is there or it isn't. I grabbed my coat. I grabbed my black composition book. I walked out of the office, past the reception desk where Sarah would be exiled on Monday, past Callahan's closed door, past Grant's empty office. I walked out to the loading dock. The evening shift was starting. The trucks were lining up. I walked over to the clipboard hanging by the bay door. It was the physical manifest log, written in pen by the forklift drivers. Truck 404, Northgate, received. Truck 405, Ironclad, received. I flipped back a few pages. I looked for Blue Harbor. I found an entry from 3 days ago. Delivery Blue Harbor Components. Order 8892. Contents palletized fluid. Received by G. Collins. Grant had signed for it. I looked at the column for bay number. It was blank. Usually, the drivers wrote down which bay the truck unloaded at. Bay 1, Bay 2, Bay 3. For Blue Harbor, there was no bay number. Because there was no truck. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. They had taken away my eyes in the system, but they forgot that I lived in the real world. I didn't need a password to count the boxes. I got in my car. I didn't go home. I drove to the nearest office supply store. I bought a high-resolution dash cam and a voice recorder. Then I drove to the industrial park where Blue Harbor had its office. I parked down the street, turned off my lights, and waited. If they wanted to play games with the numbers, fine. I was going to follow the money. And right now, the money was flowing into a black hole in Suite 404. The digital doors had slammed shut, but the physical ones were still open. Provided you knew which handle to jiggle, they had cut my access to the servers, revoked my financial permissions, and removed me from the executive distribution lists. But they had forgotten a fundamental truth about Redwood and Rains: the company did not live in the cloud. It lived on the concrete floor of the warehouse, in the break room where the drivers drank stale coffee, and in the loading bays where the real inventory moved. I stopped sitting in my office. My office was a cage. Instead, I spent my days walking the floor. I wore my steel-toed boots and my high-visibility vest, the uniform of the people who actually did the work. I started with Mike Kowalski, the morning shift supervisor. Mike was a man built like a vending machine, with hands that looked like they could crush a bowling ball. He had been with the company for 15 years. I stood by the forklift charging station, watching him check a manifest. "Quiet week?" I asked. Mike snorted. "Quiet. It is a mess. Maddie, we have got trucks showing up with paperwork that does not match the system. I have got drivers yelling at me because they have been waiting 3 hours for a bay assignment. And this new guy, the one Grant put in charge of scheduling, he thinks a 53-foot trailer can turn around in the small lot." I nodded, listening. I did not complain. I did not badmouth Grant. I just asked questions. "Is the paperwork getting signed?" I asked. Mike shook his head. "Half the time. The drivers just leave it on the desk. We are running on sticky notes and good intentions down here. If you see anything that looks wrong, Mike, just make a copy for me." I said casually, "I'm trying to reconcile the old system with the new one, just for the records." Mike looked at me. He knew something was rotting upstairs. He knew Grant was a suit with no substance. He nodded. "I will put it in the tray," he said. It wasn't just Mike. I brought donuts to the dispatch coordinators. I sat with the vendor reps who came in to service the packaging machines. I became a fixture in the places where the data originated, before it could be sanitized by Callahan Pike's finance team. I was building a mosaic of the truth, one conversation at a time. 3 days later, a courier envelope arrived at my house. It was from Frank at Northgate Freight. I opened it at the kitchen table while Ethan graded history papers. Inside was a single sheet of paper, clipped to a yellow sticky note that read, "Thought you should see this. Frank." It was a remittance advice. It detailed a payment of $60,000 for logistics consulting. The payment instructions directed the money to a PEO box in Harbor Point, Delaware. I scanned the bottom of the document. There was a signature authorizing the change of payment terms. Madeline Collins. It was a decent forgery. It had the loop in the Y that I always made, but underneath the signature was a contact phone number. I dialed it. "We are sorry. The number you have reached is not in service." My hands went cold. They weren't just stealing money. They were building a paper person named Madeline Collins to take the blame for it. When the auditors finally came, or when the vendors sued, Grant and Callahan would point to these documents. They would say, "Look, she authorized it. She changed the accounts. She is the one who directed the funds to Delaware. I am going to jail." I whispered. Ethan looked up, his face pale. "What? They are framing me." "Ethan, it is not just mismanagement. It is identity theft." Ethan stood up. "We need a lawyer. Now." I did not go to the family attorney. The family attorney played golf with Owen. I needed someone who didn't care about the Rains legacy. I found Jillian Park through a referral from a friend in HR at a different company. Jillian's office was in a strip mall next to a dentist, but her suit was sharp, and her eyes were sharper. She specialized in corporate compliance and executive employment law. I laid everything out on her desk: the forged Northgate document, the photo of the ledger entry, the notebook where I had tracked the discrepancies. Jillian listened without interrupting. She tapped a silver pen against her legal pad. When I finished, she sat back. "You are in a dangerous position, Madeline," she said. Her voice was dry, clinical. "You have evidence of fraud, but you obtained some of it by accessing systems you were technically authorized to use but were being monitored on. And this signature, this is the smoking gun, but it points at you. I didn't sign it. I said, 'I believe you,'" Jillian said. "But a jury might not, especially if the CFO and the partner testify that you had autonomy over these accounts. So what do I do? Do I go to the police?" Jillian shook her head. "Not yet. If you go to the police now, you trigger an investigation that you cannot control, and you might get fired for cause immediately, cutting you off from any further information. You need to be careful. Do not go vigilante. Do not break into any more offices. Do not hack any passwords. Then how do I fight you document?" Jillian said. "We create a paper trail that proves you could not have signed these things. We establish an alibi for every date on these forms, and we send a formal preservation letter to the company, demanding they retain all metadata. We frame it as a response to the hostile work environment claim we are going to draft." Hostile work environment. Jillian smiled thinly. "Grant called you emotional in front of staff. He demoted your team. He blocked your access. That is constructive dismissal and harassment. We use that to fire a warning shot. It tells them I am watching you. And I have a lawyer. It makes them hesitate before they shred the evidence." She leaned forward. "But Madeline, you need to understand something. You are not going to save this company." I blinked. "What the level of fraud you are describing?" Jillian gestured to the papers. "Shell companies, forged signatures, rerouted wires. This isn't a slump. This is a strip mining operation. They are gutting the assets. By the time this comes to light, there won't be a company left to save. There will just be debt and lawsuits." I felt a heavy stone settle in my stomach, but my parents, my dad's pension, the employees, they are already casualties. Jillian said, "Your job now is to make sure you are not one of them." I left her office with a list of instructions. Preserve personal emails. Download GPS data from your phone to prove your location. Do not sign the NDA. The next week, the atmosphere at Redwood and Rains shifted from tense to suffocating. I was walking past the main conference room when I heard shouting. The glass walls were frosted, but the door was ajar. I slowed down. "It is a covenant breach." "Grant," that was Kenji Sato's voice. Kenji was the risk officer at Ironvale Commercial Bank. He was usually the most polite man in the world. "I don't care about the ratios," Grant shouted back. His voice was high, cracking. "We have the receivables. The orders are in the pipeline. You can't freeze the line now. We are not freezing it yet," Kenji said, his voice icy. "We are reevaluating the terms. We need to see the updated aging report on the accounts receivable, and we need to speak to Owen." "Where is Owen?" "He is unavailable." Grant said, "He is handling high-level strategy. I am the partner. You deal with me. I cannot deal with you if you do not understand the difference between secured and unsecured debt." "Mr. Collins." I walked past, my heart racing. The bank was onto them. Ironvale was conservative. If they were renegotiating the line of credit, it meant they smelled smoke, and Grant was in there alone. Callahan wasn't even there to translate. I found Tessa in the break room. She looked exhausted. She was staring into a cup of black coffee like it was a crystal ball. "They are calling in the loans, aren't they?" I asked softly. Tessa looked up. She didn't feign ignorance. "It is worse than that. Maddie." She slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a photocopy of a letter. I picked it up. It wasn't addressed to the company. It was addressed to Owen Rains, at his home address. "Dear Mr. Rains, regarding your home equity line of credit." I scanned the document. 2 months ago, Owen had taken out a second mortgage on his house, $500,000. The funds had been wired directly to the Redwood and Rains payroll account. I stared at the paper. Owen funded payroll out of his own pocket. Tessa nodded. 2 months ago, we were short. Callahan told Owen it was a temporary glitch due to the vendor transition. He told Owen that if he just bridged the gap for a few weeks, the new strategic partners would kick in and he would be paid back with interest. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Owen is broke. He bet the house." Tessa said, "Literally, if the company goes under, Owen loses his home. That is why he is so defensive about Grant. That is why he won't listen to you. He is terrified. He needs Grant's vision to be real. Because if it isn't, he is destitute." The tragedy of it hit me. Owen wasn't a villain. He was an old man who had been tricked into gambling his sanctuary on a lie, and Grant probably didn't even know. Grant thought he was a genius. While the floor was rotting out from under him, I kept digging. I had to know the extent of the rot. I went back to the Blue Harbor discrepancies. The system said we had received 47 shipments, but I knew we hadn't. I pulled the cycle count sheets for the last month. These were the physical inventory checks done by the warehouse team. I found the sheets for aisle 4 where the hydraulic fluid should be. The count sheet listed 500 drums of fluid. The signature at the bottom of the count sheet was Rick S. Rick was a temp who had worked here for 2 weeks and then quit. But then I looked closer at the handwriting. The numbers weren't written in Rick's shaky scrawl. They were written in neat, block numerals, and at the top of the sheet, the supervisor review box was checked. Assigned to M. Collins' team. They were falsifying the inventory counts to hide the fact that the Blue Harbor stuff never arrived. They were paying for air, and then telling the auditors the air was sitting on the shelves. And they were assigning the verification to my department. I decided to check aisle 4 myself. I waited until 6 o'clock. The warehouse was quiet, the second shift just starting their lunch break. I walked down aisle 4. The rack locations for the hydraulic fluid were listed as 4B10 through 4B20. I looked up. The racks were full, but they weren't full of Blue Harbor drums. They were full of empty pallets, wrapped in black shrink wrap, with shipping labels slapped on the front. "Do not break wrap. Reserved inventory." I pulled a box cutter from my pocket. I looked around. No one was watching. I sliced the black plastic on the nearest pallet. It fell away. Underneath was nothing. Just a stack of empty cardboard boxes, taped shut to look like structure. It was a stage set, a Potemkin village of inventory. "What are you doing?" I spun around. Grant was standing at the end of the aisle. He looked terrible. His tie was loosened, his hair messy. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. I stepped back, holding the box cutter. "Grant," I said. He walked toward me. He didn't look angry. He looked frantic. "Put the knife away." "Maddie," he said. I retracted the blade and shoved it in my pocket. "There is nothing here." "Grant, it is empty boxes." Grant stopped a few feet away. He looked at the torn plastic, then at me. "I know," he whispered. "You know I stared at him. You know it is fake." Grant ran a hand over his face. "Callahan said it was temporary. He said the stock was delayed at the port, but we needed to show the assets on the books to keep the bank happy. He said it is standard practice. Inventory in transit. It is fraud." "Grant," I hissed. "It is millions of dollars of fraud, and my name is on the paperwork." Grant flinched. He looked like he was about to cry. "I didn't know about your name. Maddie, I swear. Callahan handles the admin. I just sign the big stuff. You are the partner." I yelled, "You are supposed to know." Grant slammed his hand against the racking. The metal rang out. A hollow clang in the empty aisle. "I am not the partner," he shouted. "I am the mascot." "Do you think I don't know that?" The silence that followed was heavy. Grant was breathing hard, his chest heaving. He looked at me, and his arrogance crumbled. All the bluster, the working under me comments, the cheap suits, it all fell away. "Callahan runs everything," Grant said, his voice trembling. "He tells me what to say in the meetings. He tells me which papers to sign. He told me if I just played the part for 6 months, we would sell the company to a private equity firm, and I would walk away with $2 million. I just wanted to win. Maddie, just once. I wanted Mom and Dad to look at me the way they look at, well, the way they used to look at you before I came back." He looked at me with a desperate, pathetic pleading. "Just stop digging. Maddie, please. You don't know what you are poking. These people, the guys Callahan talks to on the phone, they aren't bankers. They are scary. Maddie, they threatened to release my credit history to the board. They know things about me. If this deal falls through, I am dead. He wasn't a villain. He was a child playing with matches in a powder keg. And he had suddenly realized the door was locked. I looked at him, and the hate I had been nursing for weeks evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, pitying clarity. "Grant," I said softly, "there is no deal. There is no private equity firm. They are stealing the money, and they are going to leave you holding the empty bag. You and Owen." Grant shook his head, backing away. No, Callahan promised. "We just need to get through the audit. Just stop checking the boxes. Maddie, please, for the family." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the warehouse. I stood there for a long time, looking at the fake inventory. I drove back to Jillian's office the next morning. I told her about the empty boxes. I told her about Grant. Jillian took off her glasses. "Okay," she said, "the ship is sinking. The rats are already eating the hull. You have two choices. Madeline, you can go down with it and try to prove your innocence from the wreckage, or you can build a lifeboat." "What kind of lifeboat? You form an LLC?" Jillian said. "A separate entity, completely clean. You prepare it to acquire the assets of Redwood and Rains, when not if it collapses. Buy the company." I laughed, a harsh sound. "With what money? I don't have millions of dollars." "You don't need millions," Jillian said. "You need leverage. When this house of cards falls, the bank is going to be holding a lot of bad debt. They will be desperate to recover anything. If you walk in there as a competent operator who knows the business, who knows where the real inventory is, and who can keep the customers from fleeing, you can buy the assets for pennies on the dollar. You buy the debt. You take control." It felt like betrayal. It felt like I was planning to profit from my father's failure. "I can't," I said. "It is my family. Your family is already gone." "Madeline," Jillian said gently, "Owen has lost the company. He just doesn't know it yet. Grant has sold his soul for a title. If you don't do this, the bank will liquidate everything. The employees, Tessa, Mike, Sarah, they will all be on the street. If you buy it, you can save the jobs, you can save the legacy. You just have to let the structure burn." I thought about Sarah being moved to reception. I thought about Mike dealing with the angry drivers. I thought about Owen risking his house. If I did nothing, everyone lost. If I acted, I would be the villain in my mother's eyes. But I might be the savior in reality. "Do it," I said. Jillian nodded and opened her laptop. "What do you want to call it?" I thought about the ridge that ran behind my childhood home. The one place where I used to go to think when the house got too loud. "Collins Ridge Holdings," I said. We filed the paperwork that afternoon. "Collins Ridge Holdings, LLC. Manager Madeline Collins." 2 days later. I took a personal day. I put on my best suit, navy blue, sharp, professional. I drove to the city, to a small office building made of brick and glass. Ashford Capital Partners was a boutique private lender. They weren't a big bank. They specialized in distressed assets and turnaround capital. I met with a woman named Elena Rostova. She was young, intense, and listened better than she spoke. I sat across from her. I didn't have a pitch deck full of lies. I had my black composition notebook and a binder full of operational data I had salvaged. "I am not asking for a loan to start a business." I told her, "I am asking for a line of credit to rescue a profitable operation from a fraudulent management team." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Redwood and Rains." "We know them. We passed on their debt restructure last year. Too much smoke in the numbers. The numbers are fake." I said bluntly, "But the business is real. The customers are loyal. The warehouse team is solid. The problem is the layer at the top." I opened my binder. I tracked the real logistical costs versus the reported ones. I showed her the efficiency gains I could make if the skimming stopped. I showed her the vendor relationships I could salvage. "I am the one who knows how the machine works," I said. "When the bank forecloses, or when the owners panic, I want to be the one standing there with a check. Elena looked at the data. She looked at me. "You are betting against your own family," she asked. I looked her in the eye. "I am betting on myself," I said, "and I am the only one in that building who isn't lying to you." Elena closed the folder. She tapped her finger on the cover. "If you can prove you have the vendors locked down," she said, "and if you can show me a clean transition plan, we might be interested, but you need to move fast. If Ironvale calls that note, it is open season." I stood up and shook her hand. "I will be ready," I said. I walked out of the office. The air outside was crisp and cold. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't fear anymore. And it wasn't shame. It was power. I wasn't the little sister anymore. I wasn't the project manager. I was the competition. And I was coming for them. The envelope on my chair was not the usual interoffice manila. It was white, crisp, and sealed with the red confidential stamp that HR reserved for terminations and salary disputes. I picked it up, feeling the weight of the paper stock. It felt expensive. In this company, the worse the news, the better the stationery. I walked down the hallway to the HR suite. The carpet here was plush, muffling the sound of my boots. Simone Kettering's door was open. Simone had been the HR director for 5 years. She was a woman who usually wore bright scarves and kept a jar of jelly beans on her desk, a signal that she was approachable. Today, there were no jelly beans. Her desk was bare. She looked up when I knocked, and I saw a flicker of genuine panic in her eyes, before she smoothed it over with a corporate smile. "Madeline," she said. Her voice was tight. "Close the door, please." I sat down. I placed the unopened envelope on the desk between us. "What is this, Simone?" I asked. Simone didn't meet my eyes. She adjusted her glasses. "It is a formal notification of a performance improvement plan." I stared at her. A PP. In 12 years. I had never even received a verbal warning. My performance reviews were boringly perfect. Exceeds expectations. Highly reliable. Operational bedrock. I opened the folder. Inside was a log of incidents. October 4th. Employee displayed insubordinate behavior during the quarter kickoff. October 15th. Employee failed to execute direct verbal instructions regarding vendor migration. October 22nd. Employee was observed creating a hostile environment for junior staff. November 1st. Employee missed critical deadlines for the tri-state logistics integration. I read the list. My hands did not shake. The anger I felt was so cold it burned. I did not miss the tri-state deadline. I said, "I finished it 3 days early. I have the timestamps on the server." Simone looked at a spot on the wall over my shoulder. "The file reflects the feedback from senior leadership." "Madeline." "Senior leadership," I repeated. "You mean Grant? And Callahan?" Simone added softly. "The CFO has noted several instances where your resistance to the new financial protocols has caused operational friction." I looked down at the complaints again. The language wasn't Grant's. Grant spoke in buzzwords and sports metaphors. He used words like synergy and hustle. This file used words like insubordinate, material breach, and operational negligence. It was Callahan's voice. I could hear his crisp, dry tone in every sentence. "They are building a file." "Simone," I said, "they are backdating complaints to justify firing me for cause." Simone finally looked at me. Her face was pained. She liked me. We had shared lunch in the break room for years. She knew about my husband, about the time I broke my ankle skiing, but she also had a mortgage and 2 kids in college. "Madeline," she said, leaning forward and lowering her voice to a whisper, "the retention bonus, the $25,000, it is still on the table." I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "If I sign the NDA, if you sign the agreement, this file goes away. You take the money. You agree to a voluntary exit package in 3 months. You leave with a clean record and a check. And if I don't..." Simone sat back. She looked defeated. "If you don't, then the PIP stands. And if there is one more incident, which we both know there will be, you will be terminated. And because it is for cause, there will be no severance, no unemployment, and this file becomes your reference for any future employer. It was a masterpiece of corporate leverage. They weren't just trying to fire me, they were setting me up. If the bank auditors or the fraud investigators came looking for the missing money, Grant and Callahan needed a villain. They needed a rogue employee who had insubordination issues and access to the vendor master file. I was the scapegoat. They would blame the rerouted wires on my hostile behavior and negligence, claim I had gone rogue, and present this file as proof that they had been trying to manage me all along. I stood up, I took the file. I am not signing the bonus. Simone, and I am keeping this. You can't take that, Simone said. Standing up, that is company property. I walked to the door. I suggest you check the employee handbook. Simone, Article 4, Section 2. An employee has the right to retain copies of all performance-related documentation. I walked out. Simone didn't stop me. She sank back into her chair, looking like she wanted to disappear. I went straight to my car. I didn't trust the office walls. I called Jillian Park. They dropped the hammer. I told her. They manufactured a disciplinary file. They are getting ready to fire me for cause. Good, Jillian said. Good. I gripped the steering wheel. Jillian, they are destroying my reputation. It is good because it proves bad faith, Jillian said. Her voice was calm, anchoring me. It proves they are scared. They are accelerating the timeline because you are poking holes in their hull. Now, we strike back, but we do it legally. What do we do? I am sending a letter to Owen Raines, Grant Collins, and the General Counsel today. Jillian said, it is a formal litigation hold notice. What does that do? It puts them on notice that litigation is reasonably anticipated regarding your employment and potential whistleblower claims. It legally obligates them to preserve all records, emails, Slack messages, server logs, metadata. If they delete a single email after receiving this letter, it is spoliation of evidence. It is a felony in some contexts, and in civil court, it results in an adverse inference instruction. Meaning, if they delete it, the judge assumes the evidence said exactly what we claim it said. I took a deep breath. It will start a war. The war started when they forged your signature. Madeline, this is just you returning fire. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, the atmosphere in the office had shifted from tense to glacial. The letter had arrived. I could tell because the shredder in the copy room, which had been humming intermittently all week, went silent. A litigation hold made shredding a crime. Grant walked past my desk. He didn't look at me. He looked pale, his eyes fixed on the floor. He went into his office and closed the door. Callahan didn't come out of his office at all. I sat at my desk, feeling a strange sense of calm. I had drawn a circle around myself. They couldn't fire me now without looking like they were retaliating against a whistleblower. I had bought myself time, but time for what I needed to understand the bank's position. If Ironvale pulled the plug, the company would collapse before I could execute the buyout. I sent a text to Kenji Sato. Need to clarify some operational metrics regarding the inventory valuation. Coffee. It was a risk. Speaking to the bank without the CFO was technically a breach of protocol, but I was already being written up for breathing wrong, so I didn't care. Kenji met me at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the industrial park. He was wearing a raincoat, shaking off the drizzle. He looked tired. Madeline, he said, sitting down. I shouldn't be here. If Callahan finds out, I won't tell him. Kenji, but you and I both know the numbers he is sending you don't match the reality on the ground. Kenji stirred his tea. He didn't deny it. He looked at me over the rim of his cup. We are seeing irregularities. Madeline, the receivables aging report shows payments coming in, but the cash account doesn't reflect the liquidity, and this inventory spike. 40% growth in stock in 2 months. In this economy, it is phantom inventory, I said quietly. The Blue Harbor shipments, they don't exist. Kenji, the boxes are empty. Kenji stopped stirring. He closed his eyes for a second. I suspected as much. He said, we sent an auditor out last week, but Grant kept him in the conference room for 4 hours and then claimed the warehouse was closed for a safety inspection. I took a sip of my coffee. I can't give you the documents, Kenji, not yet, but I can tell you that if you call the loan today, you will get nothing. The assets are hollowed out. Why are you telling me this? Kenji asked. If we foreclose, you lose your job, because I have a plan to fix it. I said, but I need time. I need you to hold off on the default notice for 2 weeks. Kenji studied me. He was a risk officer. His job was to minimize loss. We have a covenant meeting next Thursday. Kenji said, Callahan is presenting a restructuring plan. He claims there is a new equity partner coming in to inject capital. There is no partner. I said. Kenji hesitated. He looked around the shop, then leaned in. There is a document circulating. Madeline, a draft of an equity restructure. It reclassifies the partnership tiers. It assigns 40% of the Class B liabilities to the junior partner in exchange for a nominal equity stake. I frowned. Junior partner Grant. Kenji said, the document names Grant Collins as the managing partner with assumed liability for the operational debt. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just making Grant a partner to stroke his ego, they were transferring the debt to him. They were setting it up so that when the company failed, the debt would attach to Grant's personal assets, not Owen's or Callahan's. Callahan was feeding Grant to the wolves, and Grant, the idiot, was probably signing the papers thinking he was getting a promotion. Does Grant know? I asked. Kenji shook his head. Based on his behavior in the meetings, no. He thinks he is being crowned king. He doesn't realize he is being crowned the king of debt. I left the coffee shop with my heart racing. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Callahan Pike was going to walk away with the cash from the fake invoices, and my brother was going to be left with millions of dollars in debt and a prison sentence for fraud. I drove back to the office. I had to verify the external connection. I knew Blue Harbor was fake, but I needed to prove who was pulling the strings. I went to the State Business Registry website. I had done this 100 times for legitimate vendors. I searched for Blue Harbor Components LLC, Registered Agent CSC Services. That was a dead end, a generic corporate service. But then I looked at the original filing document, which was available as a PDF for a $10 fee. I paid it with my personal credit card. The document downloaded, Organizer Timothy J. Reynolds. The name meant nothing to me. I searched for Timothy J. Reynolds on LinkedIn. There were hundreds, but one of them lived in Harbor Point, Delaware. I clicked on his profile. Timothy Reynolds, independent consultant. I scrolled down to his connections. He had 12 connections. One of them was Callahan Pike. I dug deeper. I went to Facebook. People are sloppy on Facebook. They think it is a private living room, not a public billboard. I found Timothy Reynolds' profile. It was locked down, mostly, but his profile picture was visible. It was a photo of him on a boat, holding a beer, his arm around another man. The other man was Callahan Pike. I looked at the comments on the photo. Happy birthday to the best brother-in-law a guy could ask for. Love. Sarah Pike. Sarah Pike was Callahan's wife. Timothy Reynolds was Callahan's brother-in-law. I sat back in my chair. The loop was closed. Callahan set up the shell company using his wife's brother. They were funneling the company's cash directly into the family bank account. It was classic embezzlement, stupid, arrogant, and easily traceable if you knew where to look. I printed the screenshot. I added it to my black composition book. That night, I stayed late. The office was empty, the cleaning crew moving silently through the cubicles with their vacuum cleaners. I was in the break room, rinsing out my mug, when I heard a voice coming from Owen's office. It was Grant. I crept closer. The door was closed, but the walls were thin drywall. Grant wasn't shouting. He was crying. It was a jagged, terrified sound that made my stomach turn. Please, Owen, Grant sobbed. You have to tell me it is going to work. There was a pause. I couldn't hear Owen's reply, but I could imagine the tired, fearful reassurances. Callahan said the audit is next week, Grant said, his voice rising in panic. He said they are going to look at the purchase orders. Owen, I signed them. You told me to sign them. You said it was just for the bank. Another pause. I can't go to jail. Owen, I have a kid on the way. I froze. A kid Grant's girlfriend. A stylist named Chloe hadn't mentioned anything. I listened. He said if I don't sign the restructure, the deal falls through. Grant said, but I read it. Owen, it says, assumption of liabilities. That means debt, right? Why am I taking the debt? I heard Owen's voice then. It was muffled, but I heard it. It is just language. Son, it is just legal language. Callahan says it shields the main asset so we can sell it. You are the hero. Grant, you are taking the weight so we can all cross the finish line. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Owen was lying to him, or maybe Owen was so deluded by Callahan that he believed the lie. Either way, he was sacrificing his son. I went back to my desk. I sat there in the dark. I had the evidence to put them all away. The Northgate forgery, the empty boxes, the brother-in-law connection. If I walked into the FBI field office tomorrow, I could burn Redwood and Rains to the ground. Grant would go to prison. Owen would lose his house. Callahan would probably flee to a non-extradition country with his brother-in-law. And the 300 people who worked here, the single moms in the warehouse, the truck drivers, they would be unemployed by Monday. I looked at my notebook. Collins Ridge Holdings. I called Tessa. Are you alone? I asked. I am at home, Tessa said, watching Jeopardy. What is it I need you to meet me at the diner? The one on Route 9. Bring the vendor list. The real one. Now. Tessa didn't ask questions. She was there in 20 minutes. We sat in the back booth. I ordered pie I didn't eat. I am buying the company. I said. Tessa stopped chewing her gum. You are what I am, organizing a buyout. Distressed asset acquisition. I have a lender lined up, but I need a plan that works on day one. Tessa looked at me. She saw the dark circles under my eyes, but she also saw the fire. Okay, she said. We worked for 3 hours. We built a stabilization plan on the back of napkins. We listed the vendors we could keep. We identified the product line that was bleeding cash, the custom fabrication unit that Grant had insisted on expanding. It was losing $20,000 a month. Cut it, I said, striking a line through it. We go back to core distribution. High volume. Low margin. Consistent cash flow. We listed the equipment we could sell. The 3 extra forklifts Grant had bought for the expansion that never happened. The fancy coffee machines in the executive suite. The company car Grant drove. What about the staff? Tessa asked. I looked at the roster. We keep the warehouse. We keep the drivers. We keep the coordinators. What about finance? I drew a heavy line through the finance department. Gone. I said, we outsource it until we can hire honest people. Callahan goes. His team goes. And Grant? Tessa asked quietly. I looked at the name Grant Collins on the org chart. He is terminated. I said. Tessa nodded. She didn't argue. She knew it was the only way. The next day, I called Elena Rostova at Ashford Capital. I have the plan. I said, I have the vendor commitments. I have the cost-cutting measures. I can show positive cash flow in 30 days if we strip out the fraud and the executive bloat. Elena was silent for a moment. And the liabilities, she asked. The bank debt. We offer Ironvale 60 cents on the dollar. I said, they know the alternative is zero. If they foreclose, they get a warehouse full of empty boxes and a legal battle with a shell company in Delaware. If they sell the note to me, they get an immediate exit and a performing loan. It is aggressive. Elena said. It is realistic, I countered. Send me the proposal. She said, if the numbers hold up, we will back you. I spent the next 2 days living a double life. By day, I was the ostracized employee, ignoring the whispers and the glaring looks from HR. By night, I was the CEO of a shadow company, negotiating terms with a private equity group. Grant was deteriorating. He started coming in late. He smelled of mouthwash and stale sweat. He would stand in the middle of the office and laugh too loudly at jokes no one made. On Friday afternoon, he cornered me in the break room. He looked manic. His eyes were wide, the pupils dilated. Hey, partner, he said. He grabbed my shoulder. His grip was too tight. Grant, you are hurting me, I said, pulling away. Don't be like that. Maddie, we are family. We are going to be rich. Did you know that the deal is closing next week? Tuesday. Tuesday. The big toast. Grant threw his hands up. We are inviting everyone. Champagne. The investors are coming. I'm going to make a speech. I looked at him. He really believed it. He believed the investors were real. He didn't know the investors were just the executioners coming to read the will. That is great. Grant, I said, you should be happy for me. He said, his face crumbling slightly. Why aren't you happy for me? I did everything right. I signed the papers. I took the hit. I looked at my brother. I remembered him when we were kids, teaching me how to ride a bike. He had held the seat so I wouldn't fall. Now he was riding a bike off a cliff. And he wanted me to clap. I am happy you found your path. Grant, I said, it was the only truth I could offer. He nodded, satisfied. Yeah, my path. He walked out, straightening his tie. I went back to my desk. I had one final piece of the puzzle to secure. I needed the bank on board before Tuesday. I called Kenji. Tuesday. I said, they are announcing the deal on Tuesday. That fits. Kenji said, Callahan sent over the final restructure documents this morning. He wants the credit line extended based on the new equity injection. Don't sign it, Kenji. I can't hold it forever. Madeline, my boss is pressuring me. The numbers look good on paper. They are fake. I said, Kenji, look at your email. I hit send. I had attached the photo of the empty pallet, the photo of Callahan with Timothy Reynolds, the Northgate forgery. There was a long silence on the line. Then Kenji exhaled, a long, slow breath. Okay, he said, this is fraud. Madeline, this is criminal. I know. We have to call the loan. Immediately. We have to seize the accounts. If you do that, I said, the company freezes, the payroll bounces, the employees walk, the inventory spoils, you lose everything. What is the alternative, Collins Ridge Holdings? I said, we buy the note, we take the asset, we keep the lights on. Kenji was silent. He was calculating. He was a banker. He didn't care about justice. He cared about recovery. Who is backing Collins Ridge Ashford Capital? They are serious people. Kenji noted, I am serious. Kenji, I am the only one who can land this plane. Send me the term sheet, Kenji said. I will talk to the credit committee on Monday morning. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I had just initiated a hostile takeover of my own family's company. I looked at the calendar. Tuesday. Tuesday was the victory party. Grant was going to stand up and brag about his partnership, and I was going to have to stand up and end him. I packed my bag. I took the black composition notebook. I took the external hard drive. I walked out of the building. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I saw Owen's car leaving. He was driving slowly, his head bowed. I almost ran after him. I almost banged on his window and told him everything. Dad, stop. They are killing you. But I didn't. Because if I saved him now, he would just let them do it again. He would believe Callahan's next lie. He would protect Grant's next failure, to save the company. I had to let the illusion die. I got in my car and drove away. The rearview mirror was filled with the reflection of the warehouse, a hulking gray box full of secrets. Tuesday. I thought, Tuesday. It ends. The Monday morning air in the conference room was so thick with tension it felt solid, like the humid pressure before a thunderstorm. Owen Raines sat at the head of the mahogany table, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. His knuckles were white. To his right sat Callahan Pike, looking like a shark in a $3,000 suit, checking his watch with an air of bored inevitability. To his left sat Grant, vibrating with an energy that was half triumph, half hysteria. I sat at the far end of the table, the place usually reserved for the note-taker. I had my black composition notebook open, pen poised. Thank you all for coming on short notice, Owen began. His voice was raspy. He took a sip of water, his hand trembling just enough to make the ice cubes clink against the glass. We have reached a decisive moment for Redwood and Raines. As you know, the market has been Challenging. Grant nodded vigorously. Volatile. Disrupted. Right, Owen said, glancing at Grant with a strange mixture of pride and apology. But we have found a path forward. A strategic partner has approached us, an investment group that sees the value in our brand and our legacy. They are willing to inject significant capital to stabilize our cash flow and fund the expansion Grant has been championing. I wrote down strategic partner equals liquidation firm. However, Owen continued, looking down at the table, this investment comes with conditions. They require a restructuring of the leadership team to streamline decision-making. Grant sat up straighter, adjusting his tie. He beamed at the room. Effective immediately, Owen said. Grant will be assuming the title of managing partner with full executive authority over operations and finance. I will be transitioning to a chairman emeritus role. And, he paused. He didn't look at me. And we will be evaluating all other management roles for redundancy. Callahan finished smoothly. To ensure we are lean for the new fiscal quarter, Grant turned to me, his smile wide and predatory. It is about agility. Madeline, Grant said, we need to move fast. No more getting bogged down in the weeds of process. This partner loves my vision for the tech integration. They want to scale it. I looked at him. There was no tech integration. There was just a contract with a shell company in Delaware run by Callahan's brother-in-law. Grant was bragging about scaling a hallucination. Congratulations, Grant, I said. My voice was flat. Callahan stood up. We will be making the formal announcement to the staff tomorrow evening. A toast to the future. Until then, this room is sealed. No leaks. As we filed out, Grant shoulder-checked me. Not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to send a message. Don't worry, little sister, he whispered. I will write you a good reference letter. I watched him walk away, strutting down the hall toward an office that was already effectively a crime scene. I went back to my desk. The silence in the office was oppressive. People knew something was happening. They huddled in clusters by the coffee machine, stopping their whispers whenever a manager walked by. At 11 o'clock, my internal phone rang. Madeline, come see me. It was Simone in HR. I walked to her office. Her door was closed. She didn't offer me a seat. She was standing by the window, looking out at the gray parking lot. I shouldn't be telling you this, Simone said. She didn't turn around. If Callahan finds out, I lose my pension. What is it? Simone. She turned then. Her eyes were red-rimmed. I was ordered to draft a document this morning. Madeline, separation agreement, termination for cause. I nodded slowly. I expected this. When effective Wednesday morning, Simone said, the day after the toast. They are going to let you attend the party. Let Grant have his moment, and then security is going to escort you out the next morning. The reason listed is gross negligence and financial misconduct. Financial misconduct, I repeated. They were pinning the fraud on me. Simone walked over to her desk and picked up a piece of paper. She held it out but didn't let go of it. Take the bonus. Madeline, please, if you sign the voluntary exit today, the termination for cause goes away. You get the money. You get a neutral reference. You just have to leave before the party. I looked at the paper. It was a surrender. It was an admission of guilt by omission. I can't do that. Simone, Madeline, you can't fight them. They have the board. They have the bank. They have nothing. I said, they have a house of cards and a match. I gently pushed the paper back toward her. Do not file the termination yet. Simone, wait until Wednesday morning. I have to file it, she said, her voice shaking. Just wait 48 hours, I said. Give me 2 days. If I'm not gone by Wednesday, you can file whatever you want. Simone hesitated, then nodded. 48 hours. I left her office and walked straight to the loading dock. I needed fresh air, and I needed to make a phone call that couldn't be overheard by the IT sniffers. I stood behind a stack of pallets and dialed Elena Rostova at Ashford Capital. The timeline has moved up. I said, how much Elena asked. She sounded crisp, professional. Tomorrow night, I said. They are announcing a restructuring. If they sign the deal with the strategic partner, which I am 90% sure is just a stripping operation, the assets will be locked up. I need the commitment letter. Elena, I need to walk into that room with a counteroffer that is fully funded. Elena paused. We are still in due diligence. Madeline, you sent us the spreadsheet, but I need proof of the vendor contracts. I need to know that if we buy this debt, the supply chain doesn't vanish. Can you guarantee the suppliers will stick with you and not the Rain's name? I can guarantee it. I said, I need it in writing. Elena said, I need letters of intent from your top 5 vendors, and I need a verified operational budget that shows you can hit that 20% cost reduction. If you get me those by tomorrow morning, I can get the credit committee to sign off by noon. Tomorrow morning, that is less than 24 hours. That is the speed of money. Madeline, can you do it? I looked out at the warehouse floor. I saw Mike Kowalski yelling at a driver. I saw the team moving boxes, doing the real work while the suits upstairs plotted their demise. I will get it, I said. I hung up. I put my phone in my pocket and walked out onto the floor. Mike, I said. He turned. Yeah, boss. I need you to pull the shift logs for the last 6 months. And I need the real inventory counts, not the ones in the system, the ones in your notebook. Mike frowned. What is going on? Maddie, we are working late tonight. Mike, we are going to save the company. I spent the next 12 hours in a state of controlled mania. I set up a command center in the small shipping office off the main warehouse floor. It had no windows and a hardline phone that didn't run through the main switchboard. Tessa arrived at 6, bringing pizza and a stack of vendor files she had smuggled out of the archives. We divided the list. I called Frank at Northgate. Frank, it is Madeline. Madeline, I told you, I can't ship until the invoice is clear. I know. I said, listen to me. Frank, the company is being sold. There was a silence. To who? To people who will strip it for parts. I said, unless I buy it, you? Frank laughed. But it wasn't mean. It was surprised. Me? I have a backer. Ashford Capital. They are real money. Frank, but I need to know you are with me. If I take over, I need Northgate to commit to a 12-month contract at the old rates. In exchange, I pay your back invoices within 7 days of closing. Can you put that in writing? Frank asked. I will send you a letter of intent tonight. If you sign it, I can get the funding. If you don't, you are going to be chasing a shell company in Delaware for your money. Send it, Frank said. I trust you. Maddie, you are the only one who ever answers the phone. One down. Tessa was on the other line with the packaging supplier. She was nodding, writing furiously. We worked through the list. By midnight, we had commitments from 4 of the 5 major vendors. The 5th, a steel supplier, was wavering, but I promised to personally oversee their account, and they caved. Then came the budget. We had to reconstruct the operational costs from the ground up, bypassing the inflated numbers Callahan had put in the system. We used the driver logs to calculate real fuel costs. We used the utility bills Mike had saved in a drawer to calculate the warehouse overhead. It was forensic accounting with a flashlight. At 3 a.m, my eyes were burning. The coffee in the pot had turned to sludge. I looked at the final spreadsheet. It worked. Without the fake consulting fees, without the expedited shipping to the ghost vendor, without the executive lease cars and the bloated bonuses, the company was profitable, not wildly profitable, but solid. It could service the debt if Ashford bought it at a discount. We have a business. I whispered. Tessa rubbed her face. We have a spreadsheet. Maddie, now you have to sell it. I saved the file to my encrypted drive. I need one more thing. I said, what I need to know how they got Owen to sign the banking authority. Tessa frowned. The what? The document that lets Callahan sign checks without Owen looking. I know it exists. I saw the result of it, but I need to see the original. I need to know the date. Tessa stood up and stretched. The physical archives are in the basement, next to the boiler room. Owen keeps the hard copies of the sensitive stuff in the fireproof safe. I don't have the combination. I said. Tessa smiled. A tired, crooked grin. I do. Owen forgets it every 3 months. He makes me write it on a post-it note inside his desk drawer. We crept upstairs. The office was a tomb. The only light came from the exit signs. casting long red shadows on the carpet. We went into Owen's office. It smelled of old paper and anxiety. Tessa opened the drawer, found the note, and dialed the combination on the safe in the corner. The door swung open. Inside were stacks of legal files. I thumbed through them: mortgage documents, partnership agreement, tax returns. Then I found it. A thin blue folder labeled Emergency Payroll Funding. August. I opened it. There was the loan agreement for the second mortgage on Owen's house, $500,000. And stapled to the back was a document titled Limited Power of Attorney and Operational Delegation. I read the text. Due to the urgent nature of the liquidity crisis, the undersigned Owen Raines hereby grants the Chief Financial Officer Callahan Pike full and unrestricted authority to execute financial instruments, open and close bank accounts, and encumber company assets to secure necessary capital. I looked at the date, August 14th. I remembered August 14th. The payroll system had crashed. Everyone was panicking that checks wouldn't clear. Owen had been running around like a headless chicken. Callahan had been calm, helpful, holding out a pen. Just sign here. Owen, it allows me to move the funds from your personal loan into the payroll account instantly. Just a formality. Owen hadn't read it. He had signed it because he wanted his people to get paid. He had signed away his kingdom because he was trying to be a good king. I felt a surge of sorrow so profound it almost buckled my knees. Owen wasn't the enemy. He was the mark. I took the file. Go home. Tessa, I said, get some sleep. I have to do this part alone. Are you sure? Tessa asked. I am sure. Tessa left. I sat in Owen's chair for a moment, waiting for the sun to rise. I didn't wait for morning. I knew Owen would be in early. He couldn't sleep these days. I heard his key in the lock at 6:15. He walked in, carrying a travel mug, looking gray and haunted. He stopped when he saw me sitting in his visitor chair. Madeline, he said, what are you doing here? I stood up. I didn't shout. I didn't throw the file at him. I need to show you something. Dad, I said. I hadn't called him Dad in the office for 10 years. It stopped him cold. He closed the door. He looked at the file in my hand. Is that from the safe? Yes. You have no right. He began, his voice weak. I opened the folder. I laid the power of attorney on the desk. Do you know what this is? I asked gently. Owen looked at it. It is the payroll authorization. From August. Read the second paragraph. Dad. He put on his reading glasses. He read it. His lips moved slightly. Encumber company assets. He stopped. He looked up at me. I thought, Callahan said it was just for the transfer. He lied to you. I said, this document gave him the power to take out loans in the company's name without asking you. It gave him the power to open accounts you don't see. I laid the Northgate forgery next to it. And this is what he did with that power. He created a fake version of me to sign checks to a fake company run by his brother-in-law. I laid the photo of the empty pallet on the desk. And this is what they bought with the money. Air. Owen stared at the photos. He sank into his chair. He looked like a balloon that had been punctured. No, he whispered. No. Grant checks the inventory. Grant said. Grant doesn't know. Dad. Or he doesn't want to know. They are using him, and they are using you. Owen put his head in his hands. I am ruined, he said. His voice was muffled. The house, the pension, it is all gone, isn't it? I walked around the desk. I put a hand on his shoulder. He flinched, then leaned into it. It is gone if you sign that deal tomorrow. I said, if you let them restructure, they will strip the rest of the assets and leave you with the debt. They will leave you homeless. Owen looked up. His eyes were wet. What do I do? I can't fight them. Callahan has people. He told me there are investors who play rough. If I back out, they will sue us into oblivion. Let them sue. I said, I pulled out the buyout proposal from Collins Ridge Holdings. There is another way. I laid it on the desk. Collins Ridge Holdings, Owen asked. Confused? Who is that? It is me. I said, you, I have a backer. Ashford Capital. We have the funding to buy the company's debt from Ironvale. We have the vendors committed. We have a plan to save the jobs. Owen looked at the proposal. He looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in years, he didn't see the little sister. He saw the person who had been holding up the roof while he stared at the clouds. "You want to buy me out?" he asked. "I want to save you." I said, "If I buy the debt, the house is safe. The second mortgage gets paid off. You retire. You keep your dignity." And Grant Owen asked. The question hung in the air. I couldn't lie to him. Grant cannot be part of the future. Dad, he is too compromised. Owen looked away. "He is your brother. He is the reason we are here," I said softly. Owen closed his eyes. He sat there for a long time. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the refrigerator in the corner. Finally, he spoke. "If you do this, Madeline, if you humiliate him, he will never forgive you. And your mother. Mom will survive," I said, "but she won't survive losing the house." Owen nodded slowly. He looked at the power of attorney document again. He touched his own signature with a trembling finger. "I was so scared," he whispered. "I just wanted to fix it. I know." Owen looked up. His face was hard now, not angry, but resolved. A tragic resolve. "Callahan isn't working alone. Madeline, he has mentioned a group. The consortium. If you cross them, they won't just sue. They don't play fair. You need to be ready for that." "I am ready," I said. "Then do it," Owen said. He pushed the proposal back to me. "Bring me the contract." I took the papers. I turned to leave. But I wasn't the only one leaving. The door to the connecting office, Grant's office, slammed open. Grant stood there. He had been there the whole time. He must have been sleeping on his couch. Or just hiding. He looked deranged. His hair was sticking up. His shirt unbuttoned at the collar. "You bitch," he hissed. "Grant," Owen said, standing up. "You are stealing my life," Grant screamed. He lunged into the room. "You are going behind my back to steal my company." "It is not your company," Grant, I snapped. "It never was. It is a shell game. And you are the mark, I am the managing partner," Grant shouted. He pounded his chest. "I signed the papers. I took the risk." "What papers?" "Grant," I asked sharply. "What did you sign?" "The liability transfer," he blurted out. The words tumbled out of him before he could stop them. "Callahan said it was standard. He said I had to assume the operational debt to get the equity. He promised me 40% if I signed the indemnity." The room went dead silent. I looked at Owen. Owen looked at Grant. Horror dawning on his face. "You signed an indemnity," Owen whispered. Grant froze. He realized what he had said. "It is just a formality." "Dad," Callahan said. "He shifted the debt to you." I said. My voice was cold. "Grant, do you understand what that means? It means when they liquidate the company, they don't go after the corporate assets. They go after you, your car, your future earnings, everything." "No," Grant said, backing away. "No. Callahan is my friend. He is mentoring me. He is framing you," I yelled. "And because you signed those papers, you made it legal." Grant looked at me, his eyes wild. Then he looked at Owen. Owen couldn't look at him. Owen was staring at the desk, defeated. Grant's face twisted, a mix of fear and hatred. "You are lying." He spat at me. "You are just jealous. You have always been jealous. I am going to be rich. Tomorrow night, I am going to be the hero, and you are going to be nothing." He stormed out of the office. We heard the front door slam. I looked at Owen. He signed an indemnity. I said. Owen nodded. He looked old. "If he signed that," I said. "And if he signed the purchase orders, they have him on the hook for the fraud too." "I know," Owen whispered. "I have to end this. Dad, tonight." "Tonight?" Owen asked. "The toast is tomorrow." "No," I said. "If we wait until tomorrow, Callahan might execute the restructuring documents in the morning. We have to move now." I pulled out my phone. "I am calling a mandatory all-hands meeting. 5 o'clock today." Owen didn't argue. He just waved his hand. a gesture of dismissal or surrender. "Do what you have to do," he said. I walked out of the office. I went to the reception desk. I logged into the PA system. "Attention all staff. Attention all staff. There will be a mandatory company-wide meeting today at 5 p.m. in the main warehouse floor. All shifts must attend. Important announcements regarding the future of the company. Attendance is required." My voice echoed through the building. I hung up the microphone. I called Elena. "We are going live," I said. "Do you have the signatures?" she asked. "I have the vendors, I have the budget, and I have the owner's consent to review the offer." "Send it over," Elena said. "If the diligence checks out, we will wire the funds to the escrow account by 4 o'clock. You will have your check." I went back to my desk. Callahan was standing there. He was smiling, but his eyes were like flint. "Mandatory meeting," he asked. "Stealing Grant's thunder, just getting everyone on the same page." "Callahan," I said. He leaned in close. He smelled of expensive cologne and rot. "Be careful. Madeline, you are playing a game you don't understand. Accidents happen in warehouses." I looked him dead in the eye. "Not when the lights are on." "Callahan." "And I just turned them all on." He stared at me for a moment, then laughed softly and walked away. I sat down. My hands were trembling, but I forced them to be still. The warehouse floor at 5 o'clock was a cavern of echoing concrete and steel. The high bay lights hummed overhead, casting long, sharp shadows across the assembly of 300 employees. They stood in clusters, wearing safety vests and work boots, their arms crossed, their faces etched with the fatigue of a long shift and the anxiety of the unknown. Rumors had been circulating all day like a virus: bankruptcy, layoffs, a sale to a chop shop equity firm. I stood on the raised metal platform that served as the loading dock dispatch station. It gave me a view of the entire floor. To my left, a portable projector screen had been set up, glowing with the company logo. Grant stood near the front. Wearing a tuxedo, he actually wore a tuxedo. He looked like he was attending a gala on the Titanic, completely oblivious to the iceberg shearing through the hull. He was smiling, shaking hands with the confused warehouse staff, acting every inch the benevolent monarch. Owen sat on a folding chair behind him. He looked gray. His hands were gripping his knees, and he stared at the floor as if hoping it would open up and swallow him. Callahan Pike stood off to the side, leaning against a support pillar. He checked his watch, then looked at me. He didn't look worried. He looked annoyed, like a man forced to sit through a boring trailer before the main feature. He thought this was a desperate last stand by a disgruntled employee. He thought he held the royal flush. I tapped the microphone. The feedback squeal cut through the murmur of the crowd, silencing the room. "Good evening," I said. My voice was steady, amplified through the cavernous space. "Thank you all for staying. I know you are tired. I know you are worried about your jobs, your families, and your future." Grant stepped forward, waving a hand dismissively. "Thanks. Madeline," he boomed, trying to take the mic. "I will take it from here. As the new managing partner, I have some exciting news." I didn't hand him the microphone. I didn't even look at him. I stepped to the side, blocking him with my shoulder. "Please take a seat." "Grant," I said into the mic, "I am not finished." Grant blinked, stunned. He looked at the crowd, then gave a tight, confused laugh. Okay. Madeline wants to say a few words. Go ahead, sis." He stepped back, straightening his bow tie. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Mike Kowalski. I saw Tessa. I saw Sarah. For the last 3 months. I said, "Redwood and Rains has been operating under a shadow. You have seen the inventory shortages. You have seen the erratic vendor changes. You have heard the rumors that we are insolvent." I paused. Those rumors were intentionally manufactured to lower the value of this company for a distress sale. A ripple of noise went through the crowd. Callahan pushed off the pillar, his eyes narrowing. "However," I continued, my voice hardening, "that sale is not happening. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, a definitive asset purchase agreement was executed." Grant started clapping. "Yes, that is right. The strategic partnership, I ignored him. The assets of Redwood and Rains, including all inventory, contracts, and intellectual property, have been acquired by a new entity. This entity has fully assumed the secured debt from Ironvale Commercial Bank and has capitalized the operating account to ensure payroll clears tomorrow morning. I took a breath. The new owner is Collins Ridge Holdings. Grant stopped clapping. His hands froze in midair. He frowned, his mouth opening slightly. Collins Ridge. Who is? Callahan stepped forward. His face was dark. This is nonsense, he shouted. He didn't need a microphone. His voice was a projection of pure authority. Madeline, step down. You have no authority to announce a sale. The board has not approved any such deal. Security 2. Security guards shifted uncomfortably by the door. They looked at me, then at Callahan. They didn't move. They knew me. I signed their time cards. I do not need the board. Callahan, I said calmly, because the board doesn't own the debt. The bank does. I gestured to the side of the stage. Kenji Sato walked up the metal steps. He was wearing his gray bank suit, holding a leather portfolio. He looked out of place in the warehouse, but his presence carried the weight of institutional power. He took the microphone from me. My name is Kenji Sato, Senior Risk Officer for Ironvale Commercial Bank. As of this afternoon, the bank has declared Redwood and Rains to be in technical default due to covenant breaches regarding inventory valuation. The room gasped. However, Kenji continued, we have accepted a full buyout of the note from Collins Ridge Holdings. We have vetted their capitalization and their operational plan. The bank recognizes Collins Ridge as the controlling party of the assets. The transition is effective immediately. He handed the mic back to me and stepped back. Callahan went pale. He looked at Kenji, then at Owen. He realized the ground had just vanished. If the bank had sold the note, his leverage was gone. His shell company couldn't buy a company that had already been sold from under him. I turned back to the crowd. So, what does this mean for you? I asked. It means the warehouse stays open. It means the trucks roll tomorrow. It means the vendors Northgate, Miller Steel are coming back. We are returning to the business we know how to do. I clicked the remote in my hand. The projector screen behind me lit up, but to build the future. We have to be honest about the past. The screen showed a timeline. It was simple, brutal, and clear. August vendor payments rerouted to Harbor Point, Delaware. September inventory levels artificially inflated by 40%. October unauthorized use of digital signatures to approve phantom invoices. I saw the confusion on the faces in the front row. They didn't understand the forensic accounting, but they understood the pattern. I pointed to the screen. Over the last 90 days, $600,000 was siphoned from this company. It was done through a shell vendor called Blue Harbor Components. I clicked the remote again. A document appeared. It was the Northgate invoice, signed with my name. This signature is a forgery. I said, and this vendor, Blue Harbor, does not exist. The money was wired to an account controlled by associates of the current financial leadership. Callahan lunged toward the stairs. That is slander. I will sue you for everything you have. Sit down, Callahan. Mike Kowalski shouted from the front row. The crowd turned on Callahan. A wall of 300 angry workers is a terrifying thing. Callahan stopped, his hand on the railing. He looked around, realizing he was surrounded. I turned to Grant. Grant was staring at the screen. He looked like a child trying to read a foreign language. Grant? I said. He looked at me. His eyes were wet, wide with panic. Madeline, he whispered. What is this? I am the partner. No, Grant, I said gently. You aren't. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen showed the indemnity and liability assumption agreement. The one Grant had signed. You were never the partner. Grant, you were the parachute. I pointed to the highlighted text on the screen. This document assigns 40% of the company's unsecured debt to you personally. It wasn't an equity grant. It was a liability transfer. They made you the managing partner so that when the audit happened, the fraud would be sitting on your desk, under your name. Grant stared at the screen. He read the words. Managing partner assumes full personal liability for operational deficits. He shook his head. No, Callahan said. He said it was to protect the asset. He said I was the hero. He lied to you. I said, he set you up to take the fall. He forged my signature to steal the money, and he used your signature to hold the bag. Grant turned slowly to Callahan. The look on his face wasn't anger. It was the heartbreak of a believer finding out his God is a con artist. You told me, Grant whispered. You told me we were a team. Callahan straightened his jacket. He sneered, his composure returning now that the pretense was dropped. Grow up, Grant. You wanted to play with the big boys. You signed the papers. You wanted the title. Remember, you didn't care what was in the contract as long as it said partner at the top. Grant made a sound like a wounded animal. I stepped closer to him. Grant Collins. I said, my voice shook. Just a little. He looked at me. For gross negligence, for breach of fiduciary duty, and for conduct detrimental to the company. I took a breath. The words tasted like ash. You are fired, effective immediately. The silence in the room was absolute. No one cheered. It wasn't a moment for cheering. It was a public execution of a family bond. Grant stood there. The tuxedo suddenly looked like a costume from a play that had been canceled. He looked at the crowd. He looked at Owen. Dad. He pleaded. Dad, tell her. Owen stood up slowly. He looked at Callahan, then at Grant. I am sorry, son. Owen whispered, I let it happen. I am so sorry. Grant's face crumbled. The arrogance, the bluster, the I'm the partner, bravado, it all dissolved in a wash of tears. He turned on Callahan. He screamed, You promised me. You said I was smart. You said I was the vision. He lunged at Callahan. It wasn't a fight. It was a flailing, desperate attack. Grant grabbed Callahan's lapels, shaking him. I signed those papers at midnight because you told me to. You told me it was loyalty. Security moved then. They stepped in, pulling Grant off. Grant was sobbing now. Loud, ugly sobs that echoed off the metal roof. Callahan smoothed his suit. He looked at me with cold, dead eyes. You think you have won, Madeline, he said quietly. You think buying the debt saves you. The group I represent doesn't walk away from an investment. You will be hearing from our lawyers, and not just lawyers. I stepped to the edge of the platform. I looked down at him. Get out of my building. Callahan. Callahan looked at the crowd. He saw the hostility. He saw Kenji Sato holding the bank file. He saw the game was over. At least in this room, he smiled. A thin, razor-cut smile. Good luck with the mess, he said. He turned and walked out the loading bay doors, into the rainy night. Security escorted Grant out the side door. He didn't fight them. He just wept, his head hanging low, the tuxedo jacket slipping off one shoulder. I watched him go. A part of me went with him, the part that remembered him teaching me to skip stones, the part that wanted him to be the big brother he pretended to be. I turned back to the microphone. My hands were gripping the podium so hard my knuckles were white. I looked at Owen. Owen walked up to the microphone. He looked at me, then at the crowd. I have failed you, he said. His voice was cracked. I let fear make my decisions. I trusted the wrong people because I was afraid of losing what we built. He looked at me. Madeline is the only one who saw the truth. She is the only one who fought for it. He took a badge off his belt, his access key. He placed it on the podium. Redwood and Rains is gone. Owen said, Long live Collins Ridge. He walked down the stairs and sat in the front row, just an old man in a folding chair. I looked out at the workers. They were watching me, waiting. I didn't have a speech prepared. I had a plan, but not a speech. I cleared my throat. Tomorrow morning. Shifts start at 7. I said, the trucks will be here at 8. We have a lot of work to do to clean up this mess. I looked at Mike. Mike, are the bays clear? Mike nodded. Bays are clear. Boss, then let's get to work. I said. For a second, there was silence. Then, slowly, the applause started. It wasn't the raucous cheering of a pep rally. It was the steady, rhythmic clapping of people who appreciated that the ground had stopped shaking. I walked down the stairs. Tessa met me at the bottom. She didn't say anything. She just handed me a clipboard with the morning's manifest. I took it. I looked at the first line item. Vendor Northgate Freight. Status confirmed. I walked toward the office. The rain had stopped outside. The air smelled of wet asphalt and diesel. It wasn't a happy ending. My brother was broken. My father was ruined. My family was shattered. But the lights were on. The inventory was real. And the company was mine. I opened the door to the main office, walked past the empty desk where Grant used to sit, and went into the small, windowless room at the back. I sat down and opened my black composition notebook. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you felt the tension, the betrayal, and the cold reality of Madeline's fight. Writing this journey has been an intense experience, diving into the complexities of family loyalty versus survival. I would love to hear your thoughts. Where are you listening from? Have you ever had to make a hard choice between family and integrity? Please share your comments below. I read every single one, and if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more realistic, emotional dramas. Let me know what kind of story you want me to write next.